A public rejection was humiliation enough, but Carden hadn't just rejected her in private, hadn't whispered his dismissal where only she could hear. No, he'd done it at the claiming ceremony, before the entire Thornwood pack, with her parents watching, with the elders recording it in the sacred ledger. I, Carden Voss, future alpha of Thornwood, reject Neve Ashford as my fated mate. She'd felt the bond snap like a bone breaking inside her chest. She'd collapsed to her knees while 300 wolves watched, some with pity, most with satisfaction. The wolfless girl had finally gotten what she deserved. Because that was Neve's shame. Her secret that everyone knew. At 18, when every wolf's inner beast awakened, hers had stayed silent. No shift, no howl, no golden eyes in the mirror, just human, just weak, just wrong. Her father had called her an embarrassment. Her mother had stopped looking at her entirely. And Carden, the boy she'd loved since childhood, the alpha heir who fate had supposedly paired her with, had looked at her like she was a disease he needed to cut away. So she'd run, disappeared into the night with nothing but the clothes on her back and the shattered pieces of what used to be her heart. That was 5 years ago. Now she was back. Not as the broken girl they'd discarded. Not as the wolfless embarrassment they'd mocked and shamed. She was Luna of the Iron Veil pack, mate to Alpha Kale Dorn, the most feared wolf in 4 territories. And tonight, for the first time since her exile, she would stand before Carden Voss and watch him realize exactly what he'd thrown away. Neither of them understood what her return would unleash. The claiming ceremony was supposed to be the happiest night of her life. Neve had dressed carefully that morning, choosing the pale blue dress her mother said brought out her eyes. She'd braided wildflowers into her dark hair, practiced her smile in the cracked mirror of her small bedroom. Tonight, Carden would formally accept her as his mate before the pack. Tonight, everything would change. She'd loved him for as long as she could remember. They'd grown up together, chasing each other through the forest, sharing secrets beneath the old willow by the river. When the mate bond had sparked between them on her 18th birthday, she'd wept with joy. Finally, something about her wasn't broken. Finally, she belonged. But that was before her wolf failed to manifest, before the whispers started. Before Carden's visits grew shorter, his excuses longer, his eyes colder. The great hall of the Thornwood compound was filled with wolves. 300 pack members pressed together, their combined scents overwhelming. Pine and musk and anticipation. Neve stood at the center of the raised platform, her hands clasped to hide their trembling. Carden climbed the steps toward her. He was beautiful, as always, tall and broad-shouldered with dark hair and eyes the color of burnt amber. Every girl in the pack had wanted him, and fate had chosen her. So why wouldn't he look at her? His gaze fixed somewhere above her head as he approached. His jaw was clenched so tightly she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. And his scent was all wrong, sharp with something that made the place where her wolf should have been recoil in warning. "Carden?" she whispered. He stopped 3 feet away, still not meeting her eyes. The hall had gone silent. Even the pups had stopped their restless shuffling. Neve felt the weight of every stare pressing down on her like stones. "I have an announcement," Carden said. His voice carried easily, trained for command. "Regarding my mate." Neve's spirit soared despite her fear. She reached for his hand. He stepped back, away from her touch, away from her. "I, Carden Voss, future alpha of Thornwood Pack, reject Neve Ashford as my fated mate." The words hit her like a physical blow. She staggered, her hand flying to her chest where the bond lived, where it was already beginning to tear. "No," she breathed. "Carden, please." Silence. His voice was ice. "You're an embarrassment to this pack. A wolfless female cannot be Luna, cannot bear strong pups, cannot be anything but a burden." Gasps rippled through the crowd, then whispers, then laughter. Someone called out, "Should have known." The broken girl thought she could be Luna. More laughter. Cruel, cutting, echoing off the stone walls. Neve's legs gave out. She hit the platform hard, her knees cracking against the wood. The bond was ripping now, strand by strand, and every tear felt like claws dragging through her soul. "Carden, please." She hated how weak she sounded, hated the tears streaming down her face. "I love you. We can fix this. I'll find a way to shift. I'll—" "There's nothing to fix." He turned away from her, walking toward the crowd, toward a figure emerging from the front row. Leora Vance. Perfect, golden-haired Leora, with her powerful wolf, and her alpha bloodline, and her triumphant smile. Carden took her hand. "I've chosen a worthy mate," he announced. "Leora will be my Luna." The crowd erupted in cheers. Neve knelt on the platform, forgotten, broken, watching the boy she loved pull another woman into his arms, watching her future crumble to dust around her. From somewhere in the crowd, her father's voice cut through the noise. "Get up, Neve. You're humiliating us." She tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. The bond had finally snapped completely, and the absence of it left a howling void in her chest. Arms grabbed her roughly. Her father, dragging her to her feet, his grip bruising. 20 years, he hissed in her ear. 20 years of raising a defective daughter, and this is how you repay us? By groveling on the floor? "Father, please, don't call me that." His eyes held nothing but disgust. "From this moment, you are no longer my daughter. No longer part of this pack. You have until midnight to leave Thornwood territory." He shoved her toward the steps. She stumbled, nearly fell, and caught herself on the railing. The crowd parted as she walked through them. Not out of respect, out of revulsion. They didn't want to touch her, didn't want her weakness to contaminate them. She was almost to the doors when Leora's voice rang out, sugary, sweet, and vicious. "Poor little Neve. Maybe in your next life, you'll be born with a wolf?" More laughter. Always more laughter. Neve pushed through the doors and ran. She ran through the compound, past the training grounds where she'd never been allowed to practice, past the dining hall where she'd always sat alone, past the archives where the pack's history was recorded, where her name would now be marked with the symbol for Exile. She ran into the forest, branches tearing at her dress, roots catching at her feet. She ran until her lungs burned, until the sounds of the celebration faded to nothing, until she collapsed at the base of an ancient oak and sobbed until her throat was raw. The moon rose above her, full and bright and mocking. Every wolf in Thornwood would be shifting tonight, running beneath that moon, celebrating Carden's engagement to Leora. They would hunt and howl and revel in their power. And Neve? Neve would walk away from everything she'd ever known, carrying nothing but her shame. She pressed her palm against her chest, feeling the empty space where the bond had been, where her wolf should have been. "I'll come back," she whispered to the uncaring night. "One day I'll come back, and they'll all see. I'm not nothing. I'm not broken. I'll show them." But even as she said the words, she didn't believe them. She was wolfless, mateless, packless. She was nothing at all. 5 years later. The convoy of black vehicles cut through the mountain pass like a blade through snow. Inside the lead car, Neve watched the familiar peaks of Thornwood territory rise against the twilight sky. She'd sworn never to return. Had spent 5 years building a life so far from this place that she'd almost convinced herself the memories couldn't hurt her anymore. Almost. 3 years of wandering after her exile, 2 years as his Luna. 5 years total since the night that had destroyed her. "You're trembling." The deep voice beside her was quiet, observant. Neve turned to meet Cale's gaze. even after 2 years as his Luna, the sight of him still struck her somewhere deep. He was nothing like Carden. Where Carden had been handsome in an expected, polished way, Cale was something else entirely. Severe features, sharp as cut glass, a scar running from his left temple to his jaw, earned in a battle that had become legend across all 4 territories. Eyes so pale they looked almost silver, wolf's eyes even in human form. And cold. Always cold. His skin, his voice, his presence. Except sometimes when he looked at her. "I'm fine," she said. "You're lying." His hand found hers, his fingers lacing through hers with surprising gentleness. His touch was cool, as always, but she'd grown to find comfort in it. "We don't have to do this. I can turn the convoy around. Let the treaty negotiations happen without—" "No." Neve's voice came out stronger than she expected. "I need to do this. I need them to see." Kyle studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded, accepting her choice without argument. Another thing she valued about him: he never tried to control her, never made decisions for her the way Carden once had. The treaty summit had been forming for months. For decades, the 4 great packs had operated in uneasy isolation: Thornwood, Ironvale, Silvermoor, and Dark Hollow. But rogue attacks were increasing, organized in ways that suggested a guiding intelligence, and even the proudest alphas couldn't ignore the threat forever. So they would meet on neutral ground, the Thornwood compound, chosen because of its central location between territories. And Neve would walk through those doors on the arm of the most powerful alpha in 4 territories. The girl who'd crawled out of here with nothing now commanded the respect of an entire pack. The convoy stopped at the compound gates. Neve drew a breath, steadied herself. The gates swung open. The Thornwood compound hadn't changed. The same stone buildings, the same training grounds, the same great hall where her life had ended 5 years ago. But everything else had. Word of their arrival had clearly spread. Pack members lined the main path, their curiosity palpable. Neve saw some faces she recognized: the baker who'd refused to serve her, the healer who'd called her condition shameful, the warriors who'd laughed loudest at her rejection. None of them recognized her. Not yet. She'd changed. The gaunt, trembling girl had become a woman who carried herself like a queen. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, threaded with tiny silver beads that marked her as Luna. Her dress was blood-red silk, a deliberate choice. Ironvale's color, a statement of belonging. And her eyes had changed most of all. Once dull with defeat, they now burned with something that made the wolves who met her gaze look quickly away. Cale stepped out first, then extended his hand to help her down. The gesture was unnecessary. She was stronger than she'd ever been, but he did it anyway, always treating her with a respect she still sometimes forgot she deserved. Whispers began immediately. "Who is she?" "That's the Ironvale Alpha? Gods, he's terrifying." "His Luna. Something about her seems familiar." Neve smiled. Soon, they would all remember. The great hall doors stood open. Inside, she could see the other delegations already gathered. Silvermoor's Alpha, an ancient wolf with silver hair and cunning eyes. Dark Hollow's Alpha, a scarred woman named Isolde, whose pack controlled the eastern forests. And at the head of the hall, standing where he'd once rejected her, was Carden Voss. He was Alpha now. His father must have passed or stepped down. The realization stirred nothing in Neve. No satisfaction, no bitterness, just the flat acknowledgement of a fact. Leora stood beside him, golden and beautiful and radiating smug confidence. The perfect Luna for the perfect Alpha. Exactly what Thornwood deserved. Cale's hand pressed against the small of her back. "Ready?" "Yes." They walked into the great hall together. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. The combined attention of 4 packs focused on the doorway, on the Iron Veil Alpha and his mysterious Luna. Carden stepped forward, his politician's smile firmly in place. Alpha Dorn, welcome to Thornwood. We're honored to host. He froze. His eyes had finally found Neve's face, really found it, and recognition crashed over him like a wave. No, he breathed. That's impossible. Neve met his gaze steadily. No trembling now. No tears. Just the calm, cold certainty of a woman who had survived the worst he could do to her and emerged stronger. "Hello, Carden," she said. Her voice carried through the silent hall. "It's been a while." Leora's face went pale. "It can't be. She's supposed to be dead. The rogues at the border. We heard she was killed trying to cross into unclaimed territory." "As you can see," Neve replied, "the reports of my death were premature." Kale's arm wrapped around her waist, possessive and protective. "My mate has told me so much about her former pack," he said, his voice deceptively pleasant. "I've been eager to meet the wolves who shaped such an extraordinary woman." Carden's jaw worked soundlessly. His scent had gone sharp with shock, with disbelief, with something that might have been regret. Too late for regret now. "Perhaps we should begin the summit," Neve suggested, her tone perfectly polite. "I believe there's much to discuss." She walked past Carden without another glance, Kale at her side, and took her seat at the negotiating table. The whispers had already begun. The Iron Veil Luna was Neve Ashford, the wolfless girl, the rejected one, the exile who had been left for dead. But she wasn't wolfless anymore. They would learn that soon enough. And when they did, everything they thought they knew about her would burn to ash. The private meeting came that night, after the formal introductions, after the stilted dinner where Neve had felt Carden's stare burning into her from across the table. She stood at the window of her guest chambers, watching the moon rise over Thornwood Forest. Somewhere out there, Carden's wolves were patrolling, and she was inside their territory, untouchable, protected by the laws of diplomatic immunity. The irony was not lost on her. A knock at the door, not Kale's knock. She knew his rhythm now, 2 quick taps followed by a pause. This was hesitant, uncertain. "Come in," she called, though she already knew who it was. Carden entered slowly, closing the door behind him. For a long moment neither of them spoke. He looked older, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago, a weight on his shoulders that came from leadership, from responsibility, from mistakes that couldn't be undone. Good, Neve thought. Let him feel the burden. "You shouldn't be here," she said calmly. "If your Luna finds out you're in another woman's chambers, Leora knows I needed to speak with you." His voice was rough. "Neve, Luna Dorn," she corrected smoothly. "Or if formality doesn't suit you, you may address me as Lady of Ironvale, but you lost the right to use my given name 5 years ago." He flinched, actually flinched, as if she'd struck him. "I deserve that," he said quietly. "You deserve far worse." Silence stretched between them. Carden took a step forward. Neve held up a hand. "That's close enough." He stopped. "I need to explain." "No." The word came out sharp as a blade. "You don't get to explain. You don't get to justify what you did to me. You rejected me in front of 300 wolves. You let them laugh while I collapsed on the floor. You stood by while your father exiled me with nothing." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "And then, you let everyone believe I was dead." "That wasn't—" He ran a hand through his hair. "The rogue attacks at the border that year, we found evidence of a struggle, blood that matched your scent signature. I thought. You thought it would be convenient if I'd simply ceased to exist." "No." The word tore out of him. "I mourned you, Neve. When I thought you were dead, I— Don't." She turned away from him, back to the window. "I don't want your grief. I don't want your explanations. I want nothing from you, Carden, because you have nothing I need. His scent shifted. Confusion, frustration, and beneath it something deeper, something that smelled almost like longing. How? He asked. How are you? You were wolfless. I saw the healer's reports. Your wolf never manifested. And now you're Luna of the most powerful pack in 4 territories. How is that possible? Neve smiled at her reflection in the glass. Wouldn't you like to know? The door opened behind them, and Kyle's presence filled the room like a winter storm. Cold, powerful, barely contained. Is there a problem? His voice was pleasant, but his eyes locked onto Carden with unmistakable threat. Carden straightened, alpha posture rising despite himself. 2 apex predators in the same room, neither willing to submit. No problem. I was just welcoming your Luna to Thornwood. How hospitable. Kale crossed to Neve's side, his hand finding her waist. I trust the welcome is concluded. It wasn't a question. Carden's jaw tightened. For a moment, Neve thought he might challenge it, might do something stupid and prideful. But even Carden wasn't fool enough to challenge Kale Dorn on a diplomatic visit. It's concluded, he said stiffly. I'll see you both at tomorrow's negotiations. He left without looking back. Kale waited until the door closed, until Carden's footsteps faded down the hallway. Then he turned to Neve, his pale eyes searching her face. Are you all right? The gentleness in his voice, so at odds with his fearsome reputation, still caught her off guard sometimes. This man whom other alphas feared, who had ended wars with nothing but his presence, who could have had any she-wolf in any territory. This man treated her like she was precious. I'm fine, she said. Then, more honestly, I will be fine. He nodded, accepting her answer without pushing. Another thing she had grown to appreciate about him. He never demanded more than she could give. Kale, she said quietly, why did you really bring me here? You could have negotiated this treaty without me. You could have left me safe in Ironvale. He was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Because you needed to face them, he said finally. Because until you do, some part of you will always be that girl on her knees, believing she deserved their cruelty. Her breath caught. That's not... It is. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the cold that always radiated from him, could smell his winter pine scent. I know you, Neve, better than you think. And I know that you've built walls around that wound without ever letting it heal. She looked away. We had an agreement, Kale. A political alliance. You needed a Luna who wouldn't complicate things with emotional demands, and I needed protection. Yes, I remember. His fingers found her chin, gently turning her face back to his. But agreements can change. Her pulse spiked. What are you saying? Something flickered in those silver eyes, something almost warm. I'm saying that when this summit is over, we should talk about what this partnership could become. Before she could respond, he released her and stepped back, his expression smoothing into its usual calm mask. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow will be difficult. He left as silently as he'd come, and Neve stood alone in her chambers, her breath unsteady, wondering how everything had changed so quickly. But hope was dangerous. She'd learned that lesson already, in this very compound, 5 years ago. Outside, the moon hung heavy and silver above the trees. In its light, Neve caught her reflection in the window glass. Not the broken girl who had fled through those woods, but someone stronger. Someone who had survived. Someone who still had secrets even Kale didn't know. Her hand drifted to her chest, to the place where her wolf had awakened 2 years ago in a blaze of power that had nearly killed her. The wolf they said she never had, ever. The wolf that had been sleeping inside her all along, suppressed by something she still didn't understand. Something that felt almost like a curse. She would find answers at this summit. She could feel it in her bones, the truth of what had been done to her, the reason her wolf had been hidden for so long. The answers were here, in Thornwood, buried somewhere in the pack that had thrown her away. And when she found them, nothing would ever be the same. The Blood Moon banquet was tradition. Every treaty summit began with a formal display of unity, all four alphas sharing food and wine beneath the crimson glow of the autumn moon. It was meant to establish peace, to show the packs that their leaders could coexist without tearing each other apart. Tonight, it felt more like a battlefield. Neve descended the staircase in a gown of midnight black, silver embroidery tracing patterns along the bodice that mimicked the phases of the moon. The Ironvale seamstresses had outdone themselves. Every step she took caused the fabric to shimmer, catching light like stars scattered across a dark sky. Kyle waited at the bottom, his expression unreadable as always, but something shifted in his pale eyes when he saw her. Something that made her pulse quicken despite her best efforts to remain composed. "You look—" He paused, as if searching for the right word. "Formidable." She almost laughed. Most men would say beautiful. Most men are fools who don't understand that beauty without power is merely decoration. He offered his arm. "You are not decoration, Neve. You never were." The words landed somewhere deep in her chest. She took his arm, feeling the familiar coolness of his skin even through the fabric of his sleeve. The great hall had been transformed for the banquet. Long tables draped in crimson cloth, candles floating in glass orbs suspended from the ceiling, the scent of roasted meat and honeyed wine thick in the air. The four delegations had been carefully arranged, each pack occupying one section of the hall, while the alphas and their mates sat at the high table. All eyes turned to Neve and Kale as they entered. She felt the weight of those stares differently now. 5 years ago, they would have crushed her. Tonight, she absorbed them like sunlight, letting their attention feed her strength rather than drain it. The Silvermoor Alpha, a wolf named Brennan whose silver hair marked his advanced years, rose to greet them. "Alpha Dorn, Luna Dorn, welcome." Luna Dorn. The title still felt new on her tongue, even after 2 years. But hearing it here, in the hall where she'd once been rejected, made it feel earned in a way it never had before. They took their seats at the high table. Carden sat 3 chairs down, Leora plastered to his side. Neve could feel his gaze burning into her, but she refused to acknowledge it. He didn't deserve her attention. The feast began. Servants moved between tables, pouring wine and delivering platters of food. Conversation buzzed around her, discussions of rogue attacks, territorial boundaries, resource sharing. Then Brennan stood, raising his goblet. "Before we continue, I believe tradition demands a demonstration. Each alpha must present their Luna to the assembled packs, affirming their bond." Neve's spine stiffened. She hadn't expected this. Beside her, Kale's hand found hers beneath the table. His grip was firm, reassuring. "Breathe," he murmured. "I'm with you." Brennan went first, introducing his mate, a serene woman named Orla who had borne him 6 children and outlived 3 wars. The Dark Hollow Alpha, Isolde, presented her consort, a quiet male wolf named Theron who seemed content to remain in her shadow. Then it was Carden's turn. He rose, pulling Leora up beside him. "I present Leora Vance, Luna of Thornwood Pack, daughter of the Vance bloodline, blessed with the strength of 3 wolf generations." Polite applause. Leora preened. Neve noticed what Carden hadn't said. No mention of love, no declaration of devotion, just bloodlines and breeding, as if Leora were a prized mare rather than a mate. Then Kale stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Every wolf present felt it. That cold, crushing pressure of an alpha whose power exceeded anything normal. Chairs scraped as weaker wolves instinctively leaned away. Kale extended his hand to Neve. She took it, rising to stand beside him. "I present Neve Ashford Dorn," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "Luna of Ironvale Pack, my mate, my equal, my chosen." Whispers erupted. Neve Ashford. The name rippled through the crowd like a stone dropped in still water. But Cale wasn't finished. "Some of you may remember her," he continued, his gaze sweeping the Thornwood wolves. "You may remember a young woman who was cast out of this very hall, rejected, exiled, left for dead." His voice hardened. "You were wrong about her. All of you." Dead silence. "She is not wolfless. She is not weak. She is the most powerful Luna any pack has seen in 3 generations." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a cold kiss to her knuckles. "And she is mine." The silence stretched for 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. Then the Iron Veil delegation began to howl, not the mournful howl of grief, but the triumphant cry of wolves honoring their Luna. Other delegations joined in, Silvermore and Darkhollow adding their voices. Thornwood remained silent. Neve looked across the hall at Carden. His face had gone pale, his amber eyes wide with something that looked almost like fear. Leora's smugness had cracked, revealing the petty jealousy beneath. For the first time in 5 years, Neve smiled at them. A real smile, not bitter or vengeful, just genuinely, purely satisfied. She had won. The howling faded, and Kyle guided her back to her seat. His thumb traced circles on her palm beneath the table, a gesture so unexpectedly tender that it made her breath catch. "Was that necessary?" she whispered. "Absolutely." His lips quirked. "Besides, everything I said was true." Before she could respond, a servant appeared at her elbow. "Luna Dorn, a message for you." He pressed a folded paper into her hand and disappeared into the crowd. Neve unfolded it beneath the table, her eyes scanning the cramped handwriting. "I know what was done to you. Meet me at the old willow by the river. Midnight. Come alone." A friend. Her stomach tightened. The old willow. The place where she and Carden had shared their childhood secrets. Where she'd once believed she would spend her life. Someone knew something. Someone wanted to talk. But who? And more importantly, could she trust them? She folded the note quickly, tucking it into her sleeve. When she looked up, Kyle was watching her, his pale eyes sharp with concern. "What is it?" "Nothing." The lie came too easily. "Just a note from one of our guards about tomorrow's security arrangements." He studied her for a long moment. She could tell he didn't believe her. But he didn't push, just nodded and returned his attention to the conversation around them. Neve's mind raced. Midnight. The willow. Answers about what had been done to her. About why her wolf had been suppressed for 18 years. She would go. She had to. Even if it was a trap. The clock struck 11. 1 hour until midnight. Neve paced her chambers, her mind churning. Going alone was foolish, potentially suicidal. Every instinct screamed at her to tell Kyle, to bring guards, to treat this like the obvious trap it might be. But she couldn't. If someone truly knew what had been done to her, what had stolen her wolf for 18 years, she needed to hear it without witnesses, without complications, without Kale looking at her differently when he learned the truth. Whatever that truth was. A knock at her door. That familiar rhythm. 2 taps. A pause. Kale. She considered pretending to be asleep. Dismissed the idea. He would know. He always knew. "Come in." He entered quietly, still dressed in his formal clothes from the banquet. The candlelight caught the scar running down his face, made his pale eyes glow like moonlight on snow. "You're not sleeping," he observed. "Neither are you." He moved toward her, stopping a few feet away. "Something is bothering you. You've been distracted since the banquet." "I'm fine. Neve." His voice was soft, but it carried an edge of command. Don't lie to me. Not about this. She turned away, walking to the window. The moon hung heavy outside, 3/4 full, spilling silver light across the Thornwood forest. Somewhere out there, the old willow waited. I'm afraid, she admitted quietly. Being here, seeing Cardan, having everyone watch me and wait for me to fail. She shook her head. I thought I was over it. I thought I'd healed. But being back here makes me feel like that girl again, the one who wasn't good enough. Footsteps behind her, then the sensation of safety that always came with his presence. Kyle was never warm, but he made her feel protected nonetheless. His hands settled on her shoulders, and she shivered at the familiar coolness of his touch. You're not that girl anymore, he said quietly. You're Luna of Iron Vale. You've survived things that would have broken a lesser wolf. You don't know what I've survived. Then tell me. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. So close. Close enough to count the silver flecks in his pale eyes, to trace the path of his scar with her gaze. I don't know how, she whispered. I've never told anyone, not all of it. Start with one thing. His hands moved from her shoulders to cup her face, his palms cool against her flushed cheeks. Just one. Her breath shook. The night I fled Thornwood, I tried to cross into unclaimed territory. The rogues found me about 3 miles in. His jaw tightened. The attack. The one Thornwood thought killed you. Yes. She closed her eyes, letting the memories surface. There were 5 of them. I had no wolf, no training, nothing. They should have killed me. They would have. What happened? Something woke up inside me. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Something that had been sleeping my whole life. My wolf. It burst out of me like wildfire, like nothing I'd ever felt before. It wasn't just a shift. It was an explosion. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. I killed them all, Kyle. 5 wolves, torn apart in seconds. And when it was over, I couldn't stop shifting, couldn't control it. I spent 3 days alone in those woods, trapped between forms, thinking I was going to die. His thumbs stroked her cheekbones, the touch achingly gentle. But you didn't die. No. Eventually I learned to control it. Or it learned to control itself. I still don't understand how any of it works. She pulled back slightly. But here's what I do know. My wolf was suppressed. Deliberately. Something, or someone, bound it inside me when I was young. And when that binding broke, she shook her head. The power that came out wasn't normal, Kyle. It was too strong, too wild. That's why you agreed to our alliance, he said slowly. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You needed protection while you figured out what you were. Yes. She looked away. I'm sorry. I should have told you before. Neve. He turned her face back to his. I don't care that you had secrets. We all have secrets. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, quickly suppressed. What I care about is that someone deliberately crippled you, stole 18 years of your life. I know. Do you know who? No, but I'm going to find out. The clock on her mantel chimed the quarter hour. 11:15, 45 minutes until midnight. Kyle studied her face and she could see him piecing things together. The note, he said quietly. At the banquet. It wasn't about security, was it? She considered lying. Dismissed it. He deserved better. Someone claims to know what was done to me. They want to meet tonight. At midnight. Alone. His expression didn't change, but his scent sharpened with something dangerous. You were planning to go without telling me. It has to be alone. If I bring guards, if I bring you, you could be walking into a trap. I know. You could die. I know that too. She lifted her chin. but I've spent 5 years not knowing why I was broken, why I suffered, why everyone I loved threw me away like garbage. If there's a chance to find answers, I'm taking it." Cal was silent for a long moment. His hands fell away from her face, and she felt the loss of his touch like a physical ache. Then he did something unexpected. He kissed her. Not the formal kisses they'd shared at public events. Not the gentle brush of lips against knuckles. This was real, consuming, a kiss that demanded everything and offered everything in return. His mouth was cool against hers, but the sensation it sparked was anything but cold. Heat flooded through her, pooling low in her belly, making her gasp against his lips. He pulled back just enough to speak, his breath mingling with hers. "Go," he said roughly. "Find your answers. But know this." His pale eyes burned into hers. "If anyone harms you, I will tear Thornwood to the ground, stone by stone, body by body, until there is nothing left but ash." Her chest ached with emotion. "Cale, and when you return, we're going to talk. About us. About what this is becoming." His forehead pressed against hers. "Because I'm tired of pretending this is just an alliance, Neve. I'm tired of sleeping in a separate room when all I want is to be beside you." She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the impossible weight of his words settling into her chest. "Okay," she whispered. "When I return, we'll talk." He kissed her once more, brief and fierce. Then he released her and stepped back, his mask sliding back into place. "Midnight," he said. "I'll be watching from the shadows. You won't see me, but I'll be there." "You said alone?" "I said you could go alone. I didn't say I would let you go unprotected." A ghost of a smile crossed his severe features. "Some things are non-negotiable, Luna." Before she could argue, he was gone. Neve stood alone in the moonlight, her lips still tingling, her thoughts racing, wondering how everything had changed so quickly, and hoping she would survive the night to explore what it meant. The old willow looked smaller than she remembered. Neve approached slowly, her senses on high alert. The river rushed nearby, its familiar sound almost comforting. How many hours had she spent here as a girl, dreaming of a future that would never come? Moonlight filtered through the willow's trailing branches, creating shifting patterns on the grass. She pushed through the curtain of leaves and stopped. A woman waited beneath the tree. Old, bent, with white hair that hung past her shoulders and eyes that gleamed amber in the darkness. Wolf's eyes. Elder's eyes. "Maeve," Neve breathed. The woman smiled, revealing teeth that were still sharp despite her age. "So you do remember me, child. I wasn't certain you would." Maeve Ashford, her grandmother, her father's mother, who had been banished from the pack 20 years ago for crimes no one would explain. Neve had been 3 years old the last time she'd seen her, too young to understand why the old woman had been dragged away in chains. "They told me you were dead," Neve said. "They tell many lies in Thornwood." Maeve's smile faded. "Sit, child. We have much to discuss, and not much time." Neve sat on the gnarled roots of the willow, the same spot where she'd once sat with Carden, sharing dreams that had turned to dust. "You sent the note," Neve said. "You know what was done to me." "I know everything." Maeve's voice hardened. "Because I'm the one who did it." The world tilted. Neve's hands clenched into fists. "What?" "Peace, child. Let me explain before you tear my throat out." The old woman's eyes gleamed with something like respect. "Though I suspect you could, now that your wolf is free." "Explain fast." Maeve nodded, settling back against the tree trunk. "Your mother was not who you thought she was. Sorrel Ashford." "My mother's name was Mira." "Mira was the woman who raised you. Your birth mother was Sorrel." Maeve's voice softened. "My daughter. The most powerful wolf born to Thornwood in 6 generations." Neve's blood ran cold. That's impossible. My father. Your father is not your father. Maeve cut her off. Aldrich Ashford is my son, yes. But he is not your sire. Your true father was someone else entirely. Someone whose bloodline carries a power so dangerous that it had to be contained. The pieces weren't connecting. Nothing made sense. Who? Neve demanded. Who is my father? Maeve was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Fenris Dorn, the younger brother of Cale's father. He was meant to be Alpha, but the curse struck him young. He fell in love with your mother and died before you were born. The ground dropped out from under Neve. No, she said. No, that would make Cale my cousin, yes. But the Dorn bloodline works differently than most. Maeve held up a hand before Neve could interrupt. The Dorn wolves cannot love. It was placed on them centuries ago, by a witch whose heart they broke. Any Dorn who falls in love will die. Their heart freezes, slowly, painfully. The only way to survive is to feel nothing. Neve's mind flashed to Cale, his coldness, the way his skin always felt like ice, the way he held himself apart, controlled, contained. Cale, she whispered. He's dying? Not yet. He's been careful. But the curse is progressing. The cold you feel when you touch him? It's already begun. Maeve leaned forward. Your power, child, comes from the same bloodline, but you inherited the other half of it. Not the curse, but the cure. I don't understand. Your wolf was bound because if it awakened, the Thornwood Alpha would have known whose blood ran in your veins. He would have killed you to prevent the curse from ever being broken. Maeve's voice sharpened. I bound your wolf to protect you. I let them banish me so no one would connect us. And I waited. For what? For you to find Cale. The old woman smiled. Fate has a sense of humor, doesn't it? The very man you chose as your mate is the one you were born to save. Neve's head was spinning. How? How do I save him? Your wolf's fire can melt his curse's ice, but only if the bond between you is complete. Maeve reached out, her gnarled hand gripping Neve's. You must mate him fully, child, heart, body, and soul. You must love him without reservation, and he must love you in return. But if he loves me, the curse kills him. Unless your fire reaches him first. Maeve's grip tightened. It's a race, Neve. His love will trigger the curse. But if your bond is strong enough, if your power is unleashed at the moment of his confession, the fire will consume the ice before it can consume him. And if I'm not fast enough? Maeve said nothing. Her silence was answer enough. Neve pulled her hand free, her mind racing. Everything she thought she knew was wrong. Her parentage, her power, even her marriage to Cale. It had all been leading to this moment. There's something else you need to know, Maeve said quietly. Aldrich knows the truth. He's always known. He let you be rejected, let you be exiled, because he hoped you would die before anyone discovered what you were. Rage surged through Neve, white-hot and blinding. My own father. The man who raised you, yes. And he's here, at this summit. Watching. Waiting. Maeve's eyes narrowed. He'll try to stop you, child. He'll try to kill Cale before you can save him. Because if that curse is broken, the power that returns to your bloodline will expose everything he's done. Footsteps. Somewhere beyond the willow's curtain. Getting closer. Go, Maeve hissed. Go now. Find Cale. Tell him everything. Neve stood, her chest tight. Will I see you again? Perhaps. The old woman's smile was sad. If we both survive what's coming. Neve pushed through the willow branches and ran. She ran through the forest, branches tearing at her dress, roots catching at her feet. Just like 5 years ago, just like the night she'd fled. But this time, she wasn't running away. She was running toward something. Toward someone. The compound gates loomed ahead. Guards stepped forward to challenge her, but she pushed past them, her alpha authority cutting through their protests. Kyle's chambers, third floor, east wing. She burst through the door without knocking. He was awake, standing by the window, still fully dressed. He turned the moment she entered, his pale eyes widening at her disheveled state. Neve, what? I know about the curse. The words tumbled out. I know about your bloodline. I know you're dying, Kale. I know that every time you feel something, every time you let yourself care, the ice spreads further. His face went pale, paler than usual, which she hadn't thought possible. How? He breathed. That doesn't matter right now. She crossed the room, grabbing his hands. They were so cold, colder than they'd ever been. Why didn't you tell me? Because there's no cure. His voice was hollow. There's never been a cure. Every Dorn who has ever fallen in love has died. My father, my grandfather, going back 10 generations. There is a cure. She squeezed his hands. Me. I'm the cure. My bloodline, my power. It can break the curse. But only if... If what? He searched her face, desperate hope warring with ingrained despair. If you love me? Her voice cracked. Truly love me. And if I love you in return? He stared at her. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then he laughed. A broken, bitter sound. Love you? He pulled his hands free. Neve, I've loved you since the moment you walked into my territory, half dead and burning with power you didn't understand. I've loved you every day since. Every night I've spent alone when I wanted to be beside you. Every moment I've pretended this was just politics. The ice on his skin was spreading. She could see it now, frost crawling up his wrists, turning his veins blue beneath the skin. Don't, she pleaded. Don't say it yet. Not until I can. I love you. The words tore out of him, raw and desperate. I love you, Neve Ashford Dorn, and I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to say it sooner. The frost exploded across his chest. Kale gasped, his hand flying to his heart, his legs buckled. Neve caught him, lowering him to the floor, cradling his head in her lap. No, no, no. She pressed her hands against his chest, reaching for the fire inside her, the wolf that had saved her once before. Please, please not like this. His eyes were already glazing over, his lips turning blue. Worth it, he whispered. Loving you. Worth it. His eyes closed, and Neve screamed. Fire. Neve had felt it once before, 5 years ago, when her wolf had exploded from its prison in a blaze that had consumed 5 rogues in seconds. That fire had been wild, uncontrolled, terrifying in its intensity. This fire was different. This fire was hers. She pressed her hands harder against Kale's chest, feeling the ice spreading beneath his skin, feeling his heart slowing with each passing second. The frost had climbed to his throat now, tracing delicate patterns across his jaw like deadly lace. Maeve had said the bond needed to be complete, but there was no time. She would have to make her love alone be enough. No, she snarled, you don't get to die. Not after everything. Not after you finally told me the truth. Her wolf surged forward, and Neve didn't fight it. She let the beast rise, let it merge with her human consciousness in a way she'd never allowed before. The transformation wasn't physical. She didn't shift into fur and claws. Instead, the change was something deeper. Her blood turned to liquid flame. Her bones became kindling. Her heart became a furnace. Heat poured from her palms into Kale's frozen chest. The ice hissed and steamed where her fire touched it. Kale convulsed, his back arching off the floor, a sound somewhere between a scream and a gasp tearing from his blue lips. Hold on, Neve begged. Please, Kale, hold on. She pushed deeper, sending her fire racing through his veins, chasing the ice wherever it spread. It was like fighting a living thing. The curse was ancient, powerful, and it didn't want to die. Every time she melted one tendril of frost, another formed somewhere else. His heart. She had to reach his heart. Neve closed her eyes and followed the fire inward. In her mind's eye, she could see it now. The curse coiled around Cale's heart like a frozen serpent, squeezing, suffocating, and turning the organ that loved her into a block of ice. "Let him go," she commanded. The curse seemed to laugh, cold, mocking, ancient. "He is ours. He has always been ours. Every Dorn who dares to love belongs to us. Not this one." Neve's fire blazed brighter. "This one is mine." She poured everything she had into that final push. Every ounce of power, every drop of love, every memory of the past 2 years. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. The way he touched her like she was precious. The way he'd kissed her tonight. Desperate and honest and finally real. The fire hit the curse like a hammer hitting glass. For one eternal moment, everything hung suspended. Ice and fire, locked in combat around a heart that had stopped beating. Then the ice shattered. Cale gasped, his eyes flying open, his body jolting as if struck by lightning. Color flooded back into his face. His hands grabbed her wrists, his grip strong, alive, and warm. Warm. Neve stared at him. In 2 years of knowing him, she had never felt warmth from his skin. But now his palms were almost hot against her wrists, his body radiating heat like a normal wolf's should. "Neve?" His voice was hoarse, wondering. "What did you do?" "I saved you." Tears streamed down her face. "You impossible, stubborn, beautiful man. I saved you." He sat up slowly, one hand still gripping her wrist, the other rising to touch his own chest. His expression shifted through disbelief, wonder, and finally something that looked almost like fear. "The cold," he said. "It's gone. I've felt that cold my entire life, and it's gone. The curse is broken." Neve wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Maeve was right. The fire burned it away. "Maeve?" Confusion flickered across his features. "Who is—" The door exploded inward. Aldrich Ashford stood in the doorway, flanked by 6 Thornwood warriors. His face was twisted with rage, his eyes burning with the amber glow of a wolf on the edge of shifting. "I knew it!" he snarled. "I knew you'd ruin everything." Cale moved faster than Neve could track. One moment he was on the floor beside her. The next he was on his feet, positioning his body between her and the threat, his alpha power flooding the room like a tidal wave. "You dare enter my chambers uninvited?" His voice was ice and iron. "You dare threaten my Luna?" Aldrich laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Your Luna? She's not your Luna. She's not even my daughter. She's an abomination, a mistake that should have been corrected 20 years ago. Father." The word tasted like poison on Neve's tongue. "Or should I not call you that anymore? You know." Aldrich's eyes narrowed. "Maeve told you." "She told me everything." Neve rose to her feet, standing beside Cale. "About my real mother. About the Dorn bloodline. About how you let me suffer for 18 years because you were afraid of what I might become." "Afraid?" Aldrich took a step forward. The warriors behind him moved in unison, trained wolves following their superior's lead. "I wasn't afraid of you. I was disgusted by you. Your whore mother spread her legs for a Dorn, and you were the result. A half-breed. A contamination of our bloodline." "Your bloodline carries witch blood," Neve shot back. "Maeve told me that too. Your own mother was a witch. Everything you accused me of being came from you." Aldrich's face went purple with rage. "Lies. The old woman's lies." "Is it?" Neve stepped forward, flames beginning to lick along her fingertips. "Then explain my fire, Aldrich. Explain my power. Explain how I broke a curse that has killed Dorn wolves for 10 generations. The warriors behind Aldrich exchanged uneasy glances. They'd come expecting to apprehend a weakling, a wolfless exile, not face down a woman wreathed in flames beside the most powerful alpha in 4 territories. It doesn't matter. Aldrich's hand went to the sword at his hip. You won't leave this room alive. Neither of you. And when you're dead, I'll tell everyone you attacked first. That I had no choice but to defend Thornwood honor. You'll try, Cale said quietly. His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. And you'll fail. Aldrich drew his sword, and the room erupted into chaos. Neve had never seen Cale fight before. She'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. The Battle of Blackmoor Ridge, where he'd killed 30 rogues single-handedly. The Siege of Dawnhold, where he'd torn through enemy lines like a blade through silk. The countless challenges he'd faced and won, building Ironvale into the most feared pack in 4 territories. But stories were just words. Watching him was something else entirely. He moved like death itself, fast and fluid and utterly merciless. The first 2 warriors fell before they could even raise their weapons, their throats torn out by claws that had appeared from nowhere. The third managed to shift, his wolf form lunging for Cale's throat. But Cale caught him midair and slammed him into the stone wall with enough force to crack bone. Neve wasn't idle either. Her fire roared through her veins, eager to be used. When a warrior circled around Cale's flank, she sent a lance of flame that caught him in the chest, sending him screaming to the floor. 4 down, 2 left. And Aldrich. The remaining warriors hesitated, their confidence shattered. They were pack wolves, trained and capable. But they weren't prepared for this. Weren't prepared for an alpha whose curse had just been broken, whose full power was only now being unleashed. Weren't prepared for a Luna who could wield fire like a weapon. Run, Neve told them, her voice surprisingly calm. Run, and I'll let you live. Stay, and you'll burn with him. They ran. Aldrich stood alone now, his sword trembling in his grip, his eyes darting between Neve and Cale. For the first time in her life, Neve saw fear on his face. Real fear. The kind that came from knowing you had lost. You can't do this, he said. I'm a respected elder of Thornwood. Carden will do nothing. The voice came from the doorway. Carden Voss stood there, flanked by his own guards. His amber eyes swept the room, taking in the fallen warriors, the scorch marks on the floor, the sight of his Luna's father cornered and defeated. Alpha Voss. Aldrich's voice cracked with desperation. This woman attacked me. She's working with the Ironvale Alpha to undermine Thornwood. I heard everything. Carden's voice was flat. I've been standing outside that door for the past 3 minutes. I heard your confession. Neve stared at Carden, uncertain what to expect. This was the man who had rejected her, who had let her be exiled, who had believed her dead and done nothing. But something had changed in his eyes, something that looked almost like shame. You knew, Carden said to Aldrich. You knew she wasn't wolfless. You knew the wolf was suppressed. You knew your own mother was a witch, and you let Neve take the blame for everything. I did what was necessary to protect this pack. You did what was necessary to protect yourself. Carden stepped into the room, his guards fanning out behind him. Aldrich Ashford, you are under arrest for conspiracy, for the attempted murder of a foreign Luna, and for crimes against the Thornwood bloodline. Aldrich's sword clattered to the floor. His legs seemed to give out beneath him. He crumpled to his knees, a broken man, all his schemes and secrets finally catching up to him. Take him to the cells, Carden ordered. He'll stand trial before the 4 alphas. As the guards dragged Aldrich away, Carden turned to face Neve. The silence between them stretched, heavy with years of pain. I'm sorry. The words seemed to cost him everything. What I did to you, the rejection, the exile. I was young and stupid, and I believed my father when he said you were unworthy. I believed Aldrich when he whispered that you would weaken the pack. You believed them because you wanted to, Neve said quietly, because it was easier than standing up for me. Yes. He didn't make excuses, didn't try to justify himself. I was a coward, and I've regretted it every day since. Neve considered his words. The anger was still there, buried deep, but it felt distant now, old, like a wound that had finally scarred over. I don't forgive you, she said. I don't know if I ever will, but I'm not the girl you destroyed anymore. And spending my life hating you would only give you power you don't deserve. Carden nodded slowly. That's fair. Kyle stepped closer to Neve, his hand finding hers. His fingers were warm now, genuinely warm, and the simple reality of it made her chest ache. This summit is over, Kyle said. We'll conclude the treaty tomorrow, but tonight, my Luna and I need rest. Carden's gaze dropped to their joined hands. Something flickered across his face, too complex to read. And then it was gone. Of course, he said. Your chambers will be guarded. No one will disturb you. He left without another word. Neve sagged against Kale's side, the adrenaline finally fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Is it over? She asked. Is it really over? Kale pressed a kiss to her forehead. Almost, he murmured. There's still one thing left to do. What's that? His pale eyes, warmer now than she'd ever seen them, met hers. I believe I owe you a proper mating, he said softly. A real one, not a political alliance, not a contractual arrangement. His hand cupped her face. A bond between two wolves who love each other. Neve's breath caught. Kyle. I love you. He said it simply, without fear, without the curse lurking behind the words. I've loved you for so long, and I'm finally free to say it, to feel it, to show you what you mean to me. Tears burned her eyes again, but these were different. These were tears of joy, of relief, of a future she'd never dared to hope for. I love you too, she whispered. I think I have since the day you found me half dead at your border and didn't ask any questions. You just took me in. Best decision I ever made. His lips found hers, and this kiss was different from all the others. Soft and sweet, and full of promise. Marry me again, he murmured against her mouth. Not for politics. Not for protection. For love. Yes. The word was barely a breath. Yes, Kale. 1,000 times yes. He lifted her into his arms and carried her to the bed, and for the first time in 5 years, Neve felt truly, completely whole. 6 months later, the great hall of Iron Vale was transformed. Where Thornwood's hall had been stone and shadow, Iron Vale blazed with light. Massive windows let in the summer sun, and flowers cascaded from every surface, filling the air with their sweet perfume. Neve stood at the altar, dressed in a gown of silver and flame orange, the colors of her two bloodlines finally united. Her dark hair was crowned with a circlet of iron and ruby, the symbol of the Iron Vale Luna. Before her stood Kale, resplendent in black and silver, his pale eyes shining with an emotion he no longer had to hide. The 4 packs had gathered to witness their union. Not the political alliance they'd announced 2 years ago, but a true mating ceremony, a celebration of love that had survived curses and exile and years of pain. Even Carden was there, standing at the back with the Thornwood delegation. Leora was notably absent, having fled the pack in disgrace after the truth emerged. The Vance family had conspired with Aldrich for years. They'd helped suppress the truth about Neve in exchange for Aldrich's support in positioning Leora as the future Luna. When Aldrich fell, they fell together. The efficient, an elderly wolf from Silvermoor whose neutrality was beyond question, raised his hands for silence. We gather today to witness the true union of Alpha Kale Dorn and Luna Neve Dorn. he proclaimed. Their bond was forged in fire and tested by ice. It has endured betrayal, exile, and a curse that spanned 10 generations, and it has emerged stronger than ever. Neve's eyes never left Cale's face, this beautiful, complicated man who had chosen her when she was broken, who had waited patiently while she healed, who had loved her even when he thought that love would kill him. Do you, Cale Dorn, take Neve as your true mate? Not by contract, not by politics, but by the bond of your heart and soul? I do. His voice rang through the hall. I take her as my mate, my Luna, my partner in all things. I choose her today and every day that follows. And do you, Neve Dorn, take Cale as your true mate? I do. Her voice was strong, steady, the voice of a woman who had finally found her place in the world. I take him as my mate, my alpha, my home. I choose him now and forever. The officiant smiled. Then let the bond be sealed. Cale's hands cupped her face. His eyes, warm and clear and so full of love, gazed into hers. My Luna, he murmured, my heart. He kissed her, and the hall erupted in howls, not the mocking laughter that had followed her from Thornwood, not the cruel whispers that had haunted her for 18 years. These howls were celebration, triumph, joy. 4 packs raising their voices to honor the union of 2 wolves who had fought through impossible odds to find each other. When the kiss finally ended, Cale pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like he would never let go. Was it worth it? Neve asked softly, for his ears alone. Everything you went through, the curse, the cold, the loneliness? Every moment. He pressed his forehead to hers. I would do it all again if it led me to you. The celebration continued around them. Food and wine and dancing, the 4 packs mingling in ways they never had before. The treaty they'd signed wasn't just about rogue attacks anymore. It was a genuine alliance, built on mutual respect and the shared witness of a love story that had become legend. Later, as the sun set and the stars emerged, Neve slipped away from the crowd. She found herself at the edge of the Ironvale Gardens, looking out over the vast territory that was now her home. Footsteps behind her. Familiar now. Beloved. Kyle's arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. His warmth still amazed her, still felt like a miracle. Escaping your own wedding celebration? He teased. Just needed a moment. She leaned into him, watching the stars appear one by one. So much has changed, Cale. A year ago, I thought I was alone. Thought I would always be running from my past. And now? She turned in his arms, looking up at his scarred, beautiful face. Now I have a pack that respects me, a mate who loves me, a future I never dared to dream of. Her hand found his chest, resting over his heart, his warm, beating heart. You gave me all of that. You gave yourself all of that. He covered her hand with his own. I just had the good sense to recognize what you were worth. We saved each other, Neve said softly, just like we were supposed to. His lips found hers, gentle and sweet and full of promise. In the great hall, the celebration continued. Wolves from 4 territories danced together, old grudges forgotten in the light of new beginnings. The rogue attacks had slowed since the alliance had formed. Whispers said they would stop entirely now that the packs stood united. In the Thornwood cells, Aldrich Ashford awaited trial, his schemes exposed, his power stripped away. He would spend the rest of his days paying for his crimes. In a small cottage at the edge of Ironvale territory, Maeve Ashford watched the stars from her garden, a smile on her weathered face. Her gamble had paid off. Her granddaughter was safe, loved, and finally free. And in the gardens of Ironvale, beneath the vast canopy of stars, Neve and Cale held each other and dreamed of the future they would build together. A future without curses, without secrets, without shame. just love, finally allowed to burn as bright as it was always meant to. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. I read every single one, and your support means everything. Until next time.